I just want to say this to everyone who said that I was gross and that I was defending Bryan Kohberger. This is my point. They found one tiny small thing on a knife sheath button, okay, of his evidence. But there was over 100 wounds, no defense wounds. He had no DNA under his fingernails. All of the victims, had zero of his DNA under their fingernails. There was none of his blood. There was none of his hair left behind, okay? There's no video footage showing him 1000% walking into that house by himself or with someone else. There's no cell phone records that show that his phone was pinging from the same tower as theirs from the time of the unalivings. The fact that Dylan never called 911, but in her 11/17 interview, she said that the walls were paper thin and you could hear everything. So if you could hear Kaylee and Maddie playing with Murphy upstairs, then how could you not hear them screaming the screams that I heard from the Linda Lane footage from across the street? The fact that there was another Elantra that was abandoned around the time these crimes occurred, that was, I don't know, missing a license plate. I didn't come to this conclusion just because I was like, well, free Bryan Kohberger, because no, that's never what I said. What I said is, show me corroborating evidence. Dylan says that she's the eyewitness survivor, but Dylan also knows that if you go into an interrogation and you tell them, well, I'm not sure if I was awake or asleep, I don't know if it was a dream or reality, that was her trying to blur the lines. And that was her trying to distance herself from the crimes. That's what that is. It's distancing language. Watch Deception Detective on YouTube, please. So if the eyewitness statement itself isn't credible, and all you said is bushy eyebrows. Anyone in the fucking world could have bushy eyebrows. The fact that they demolished the crime scene before we could get any real truth behind it. Because why? Because they knew if anyone was to walk through that house and see how small it was, they would know that one person did not just commit that crime alone. If Bryan really did it, don't you think that just like every other investigation, they would literally be able to go to the cell phone records, look at the cell phone records, align that with the pings from the cell phone towers, and then that would align with the surveillance footage, right? Because the tower would be tracking him, so they would know the general vicinity to look at the cameras from the streets and stuff. The grub truck was being live streamed, you guys. Anyone could have been watching that live stream and said, oh, the girls are there. So that obviously would imply that they weren't home. Dylan left the door unlocked. How are we to know that the people or person that did this wasn't already hiding in the house? Because why wouldn't Murphy bark if a masked man entered the home? And why was he put in a separate room? Why were Maddie and Kaylee together, but Murphy was locked up separately? Did they have a muzzle on Murphy? Now, with the time frames changing by like an hour or so, that shows that Kohberger was not even in Moscow at the time. So no, I'm not crazy. What's crazy is that there's not enough evidence, especially video or eyewitness footage or anything, to definitively prove that it was him. Yes, he said yes to the plea deal, okay? If you were innocent or partially innocent or did not act alone, you would take the plea deal and take life in prison versus taking the firing squad. Bryan Kohberger has remained silent because he understands, as a criminology and law student, that you have the right to remain silent, and if you speak, it will be used against you. I'm just guessing that none of you guys have ever been in the criminal justice system or been incarcerated or been in a plea deal or been to court for a felony or something, because I have, and none of this adds up. Because every other case I've ever seen, they go from the victims, they look back, who did they have issues with, what was going on, the drugs. That's another thing. There's one thing that always comes back, and it's the rugs. That's one thing that everyone knew and they all had in common. Everyone knew that this house had rugs in it. That's my point. Because don't you think out of all of this video footage that we've seen and all the other stuff, and at this point, they put cameras and GPSs inside of cars. How could they not tell through his car computer that he wasn't there. If you guys don't question this, then I don't know how. I truly don't. I wish to God that I was like you guys and that I could just be like, okay, he did it. But I'm from a city where I see people get away with crimes, and I see people that commit crimes, and yeah, I see it all the time. I mean, I'm from this city where a woman literally microwaved her baby in the early 2000s. So yeah, maybe you guys just don't have complex post-traumatic stress disorder like I do, but I have it, and it makes me question everything until it makes sense. So no, until I see some hard evidence, I won't let it die, because there were 4 innocent, beautiful souls stolen that night, and they are the real victims. Dylan is not the real victim. Bethany is not the real victim. They should have done the right thing and called the police, because if you see something, say something. If she would have called the cops, maybe 3 of them at least could have still been here. Think about that. That's where the injustice is. She never called the cops, and 4 people lost their lives because she couldn't make a split second decision. So that's where I'm at with it. You guys can call me names and say that I'm crazy and call me a murderer or defender. When I see the evidence, I'll believe it. Or when Koberger goes through and gives me verbatim what happened with his own voice, then maybe I'll believe it. But until then, I'll continue to ask the questions that nobody else has the balls to. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I love you guys. Bye.